Welcome to Cult and Classic.
Hello, friends and fiends of the pod, to a mini episode or a mini-sode of Cult and Classic. These are our Friday episodes that are short little doses of movie reviews, interviews, and other cool things that we want to bring to your attention and to help you tide you over until the next full episode of Cult and Classic, which lands every Tuesday. So for this week's mini-sode, we have a review of The Craft Legacy 2020. Yes, this is the 24 years later sequel to the 1999, or rather 1996 film, The Craft. The Craft is a cult favorite, starring, of course, Neve Campbell, Robin Tunney, and Fairuza Balk, and where four Catholic prep girls become a coven and get magical powers from witchcraft, and then start to turn on each other when one of them starts to take things a little too far. It was rated R. It was sort of it's both been bashed by the Wiccan community and other witches because they think it portrays it in an evil way, but also it's been embraced by this generation as sort of a symbol of female power in a powerless male-dominated society. So it makes sense to tackle the film franchise again now when we have so much social tumult going on. This one is written and directed by Zoe Lister-Jones. Zoe Lister-Jones, probably most known for an indie film she did in 2017 called Band-Aid, about a married couple who start writing songs about their fights. I don't think that's a well-known film, so this is really her first foray into the big launch titles. And unfortunately, it really hurts me to say that The Craft Legacy is a bad film. It hurts me in so many levels because it tries to tackle a number of things, from non-binary sexuality to female empowerment. And unfortunately, it does none of them well. And the story is problematic. The script is very, very amateur. It hurts to say this. I know you can tell in my voice the frustration, because already the film is going to face an onslaught of hate and dislike from people who have deep-set anti-woman sentiment, and fanboys who don't want to see a sequel to a film that they love. Fangirls feel the same way, other people that feel the same way. But this film really fails in just about every single level. In fact, I do think it fails in every level. From a story standpoint, it follows Lily as she moves to a new town where her mom is sort of jumping into a marriage with a new guy, played by David Duchovny. Great to see him on screen again. I wish it was in a better movie, but there we go. Zoe is played by Kaylee Spaney, she was in Pacific Rim Uprising. And her three friends who are have been trying to form a coven, but they need a fourth, is played by Zoe Luna, Gideon Adlon, and Lovey Simone. It's a very multi-ethnic cast, which should be commended. There are some confusing problems, though, because if you're going to do that, if you're going to put in a conspicuously multi-ethnic group of leads, which is great, why then do you have the white female character, who is the most uninteresting and most timid, the main character who ends up being the savior at the end of the film, which is how this one wraps up? It's just another white savior complex situation. It's a bad choice. Everybody does pretty well. I think Gideon Adlon is the comic relief character who says a lot about crazy stuff. She does fine, but they end up using her as a sort of the token friend character that just says something to break the tension, and they overuse it. So she ends up just being a soundbite. And there's nothing really good to say about them. They have a little bit of chemistry when they're let to be free together, and so there's sparks of moments that could work. But then when they actually become a coven and start having powers, it's super childish what they feel like. They're supposed to be, I think, 15-ish, somewhere around there. None of them seem to be driving. And so you expect them to act young in some ways, but they're their powers that they use things for is like freezing the lunchroom at school and running around posing people's selfies and doing goofy things like that. It just doesn't serve a purpose, and the story then suffers and doesn't seem to have a story until over halfway through the film. The ultimate revelation, which we all see coming, is that David Duchovny, the new father figure, is actually a witch himself who is bent on asserting masculinity back into the world of man and putting female kind down into a subservient position once again. It's very heavy-handed. I'm not saying it's not a good topic, but it's done so overtly here that the story suffers. And the story suffers to the point where nothing is left to thought. We are told everything. I mean, let's listen to this clip to near the climax when Lily's character has found out that her new to-be father is actually this evil guy who's trying to steal her power because, yes, she is a chosen character. She's a Mary Sue. She's chosen in that she has this power. We don't know why until the end. And here, just listen to this clip.
Lily, power is order. It belongs in the hands of those who understand it. It's been that way for thousands of years. Timmy's a good example of that.
See, everything is told to you directly. He says, we are your kings. We're not made in your image, sort of suggesting that men are not born of women, even though, of course, we are. It's just nothing is subtle. And because nothing is subtle, it makes the audience feel stupid because we're being treated like we're stupid. Now, certain things do need a heavy hand because people don't pay attention. But in this case, every single thing is exploited to the extreme and at the expense of those causes that should be represented in film. For example, the bully character at school is a man who relentlessly teases and then prepositions Lily's character after she has her period in homeroom or something. He's played by Nicholas Galitzine. I could be mispronouncing his name, but he's going to be in an upcoming series with Uma Thurman on Netflix called Chambers. He did a fantastic job as the bully that they cast a spell on to get him in tune with his higher self, and then he flips and he becomes sort of the dream boy who's really sensitive. This in itself is problematic because the version of him being ultimately sensitive is like a stereotypical woman that does not reflect real femininity. He's overtly conscious and sensitive to the point where he says that he actually suffers because he doesn't make decisions, and he's really, I mean, I guess it could be cute to a 15-year-old brain, but it's not a well-rounded person. Then we find out in a really fantastic, the best scene of the film, and it's because of him that he had a sexual experience with Lily's to-be step-brother, and that really hurt him because it turns out he's bisexual, and yet this person who he was really close to won't even speak to him now because David Duchovny's father character is hypermasculine, and of course, homosexuality or LGBTQIA sexuality of any kind is unacceptable to him if it's not heterosexual. This is a good scene. Nicholas Galitzine does a great job putting his emotion into the role. I feel like the tears are real. It's just a very good job. Problem is, it doesn't seem to fit in this movie because the movie doesn't know what it wants to do. At this point in time, the movie has been sort of like a teen comedy with these four girls getting to know each other. But by the way, we don't actually get to know them at all. They're very, very flat characters. Only Kaylee Spaney's character of Lily has any sort of story. We don't see anyone else's home life. We don't see their circumstance, which is something we did see in the original Craft. We don't see sort of anything to make us view these people as actual people, which is really unfortunate because I think there's something there, and I think that this cast could have pulled it off. But unfortunately, the desire to appeal to a wide audience, I guess, sort of hampers this. And then once we find out that this character is bisexual, which, by the way, again, problematic. Not because we shouldn't have bisexual characters, but because it feels like the only reason he's not just homosexual is because they want him to hook up with the lead character, Lily, who, by the way, she's hooking up with someone who has been had a spell cast on them to become a person that doesn't seem like it's the person they would really be normally. That's weird. That feels like a weird type of grooming. It's just a very strange situation. And instead of delving into that and making this a more mature film, which could have been done as well, it just keeps it on the surface level and pretends that that's not an issue, which of course it is a huge issue. Now, we then go to David Duchovny's character killing this boy who he finds out has a spell cast on him, but also had a homosexual relationship with one of his sons. I say one of his sons because Lily has 3 new stepbrothers, which is completely useless to the plot. There is no reason for 3 brothers to be there. There's only one brother that has anything to do with the plot, and it's the one that is the oldest that we see in maybe 2 scenes, has like a couple of lines. I think he might actually only have 2 or 3 lines in the entire film, who had the romantic liaison with this other character played by Nicholas Galtzine, and there's no reason for it. It's just a weird, muddied, more characters thrown in that are necessary. What it comes down to is this movie doesn't have a strong plot. In the last 30 minutes, we start to see some plot come out, and it's all crammed in, where David Duchovny really reveals himself as the ultimate villain, and then the 4 girls reunite to take him down, which, by the way, they don't. They reunite only to, within about 45 seconds, have all of the characters who are not Caucasian presenting pushed to the side, and then Lily has to save the day. It's like I said, it feels like a white savior complex. It doesn't make any sense. She also has a Twilight syndrome, where it's unclear why she's so popular with these people, because she doesn't say much. She does have good fashion sense. That said, some of the fashion sense in the movie is really brutal, especially to Zoe Luna, who is by no means huge, but a larger figured person. And especially the outfit at the end in the final scene that they put her in is hateful. Hateful. Oh my God, it's hateful. I don't know who I could recommend this movie to. It feels like it would appeal maybe to 14, 15-year-olds, particularly girls. It does have that vibe about it. They mention Twilight several times in this. Listeners who watch The Craft and are familiar with it will understand that this means they have aged down this substantially, and they did. It's weird then, because they aged it down so much and made it so tame, that there's 2 scenes featuring masturbation. One is when Lily walks in on one of her brothers masturbating for no apparent reason, and it's never brought up again. And then another time when Lily actually starts to masturbate with her romantic character's jacket, it looks like. It's confusing what's actually happening. So as much as having it shown that women masturbate, which is true, we all do, and is a good thing to put out there for young women and men to see, to understand that it happens, it's weird to put it in this film. There's also 2 scenes where Lily Kaylee Spaney is nude. One, she's getting into a bath. One, she's leaving the bathroom where she takes a shower, but they live in a mansion, and you're telling me she doesn't have a bathroom closer, and you're also telling me that she just moved in with 3 teenage boys and she's not going to dress in the bathroom before she leaves. It's a very weird situation. It just feels like someone who isn't a human wrote this. And I'm not trying to offend Lister-Jones by saying that, but I don't understand some of her choices. Last thing to harp on is the technical editing in this film is very confusing. There are cuts that we don't know what happened, when it happened. One instant, Lily's eating dinner with her family, and the next instant she's in her room, and it's unclear, did she just leave the table? Is this an hour later? There's no understanding of the situation. There's several scenes where The time seems to change without giving us any indication of it. At one point in time, you're looking at a window that has light, and then the window is golden colored throughout the light, and you're just like, does that mean time changed? Did something supernatural happen? I don't know. I know I said this is the last thing I want to harp on, but I lied. The other thing is that as a lover of witches in cinema, both in a realistic contemporary sense, but also in a medieval, Maleficarum, witch's hammer sort of sense, there is no witchcraft in this film. It's it's more a superhero film. It feels like a superhero Fox recent X-Men film more than it feels like a witch film. They do cast a circle in the beginning in the woods, and it's the most witchy thing, but it also doesn't make any sense. They make a connection and then freeze time. Well, were they trying to freeze time? No. Then why did it happen? I don't know, but it seems to be the one thing they can do in this movie. After that, there's no spells. It's just them using telekinesis and lighting fires and doing things with their mind without any sort of actual ritual or witchy stuff at all. It just doesn't feel like a witch movie. It doesn't feel like a horror film. It doesn't have a strong plot. It has really bad writing. The charming actors in this, and most of them I think are fairly charming, they're not giving anything to work with. I blame this solely on the direction and the writing because it's just weak. And I hate it because it's going to give people who would instantly downvote the Craft legacy for the wrong reasons ammunition, because it is a female-centric movie written and directed by a woman. It is a take on a classic property, and all of these things put it in the sights of trolls. And when unfortunately your product isn't very good, in fact, this is downright bad, it's hard to argue with them. And that I hate agreeing in any way, shape, or form, or appearing to agree with trolls. But unfortunately, The Craft Legacy is a bad movie. Again, maybe a teenage girl might be interested in this. If that's the case, great. But it's not going to push any envelopes. It's anticlimactic. The story and narrative structure is problematic, and it's not going to be on anybody's classic list. So I'm going to say you can skip The Craft Legacy. Watch it if you want to have all the information so you can make a judgment yourself. And maybe Zoe Lister-Jones' next production will be a step above, but I'm not sure what happened with this one, if there was a lot of studio pressure and intervention that caused issues, but right now it's a mess across the board. So that's it for this mini-sode of Cult and Classic Podcast. Thanks so much for listening, and I cannot wait to talk to all of you on Instagram at Cult and Classic Podcast. Also, you can always email us at cultandclassicpodcast@gmail.com. Playing us out, as always, is The Chud with All About Evil. Join our Patreon at patreon.com/cultandclassicpodcast. And thank you guys so much. I appreciate it, and I love you. Hey everyone, thanks for listening to Cult and Classic Podcast. This podcast is important to me, but what's more important are the rights, privileges, and freedom from violence of everyone in this country and in this world. And that means supporting Black Lives Matter. If you'd like to make a donation, please go ahead and visit cultandclassicpodcast.com, where we have a list of places you can donate and help out. And please stay safe.